Putting out fires quickly. We all need somebody that can do that. Oh, yes. Rapport, building rapport, validation, compassion, resource referral. That's so good. Hopefully, you were able to participate in our resource Padlet activity earlier. Oh, yes. Consistency is so important for our kids, right? Because that's something that they just don't have. Next slide, Savannah. Heather, could you come manage multiple meetings for me? I need that. Okay, so we're going to open up this next portion of our presentation. You know, I realized, actually, can I have you pop back to the previous screen, Savannah? Let's just touch base on what we're doing here. So this next segment of our training today is going to be focused on credit accrual in all of its many different forms, and supporting our students by recognizing their work and helping them move through their high school experience and into graduation and beyond. And I think of this, I call this section cultivating competence, but it's really about helping students recognize what is it that you are good at, what are you able to do, and supporting them with being connected with and acknowledging those skills and talents that they have. And also right there, advocating for our students, advocating for them to get that credit that maybe they've worked for but didn't come with them because they've been moving around a lot, or the credit system in one state looks different from ours. And so this is going to be a lot around how do we help translate. I'm going to do a lot of translating in this particular segment of our presentation, and really digging into that competence and how we're recognizing that. I think of credit like employment. I'm here and I'm giving this presentation, but I'm an employee and I'm getting paid to come and do this for you. And I think when students get their credit, that is their way of getting paid for the work and the time that they've put in. And when they don't get that credit, it feels like you've been doing work for nothing. It can feel really crushing, actually, really crushing. I love this quote. It's part of The Man in the Arena speech by Theodore Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. It's the man who's actually in the arena. I could go through the whole thing because I love it that much. But it's not us. It's not up to us to be the critic. It's us to be the champion. It's up to us to be the champion for these students who are struggling. Next slide again, Savannah. Thank you for going back to that. Stacy, I'm going to pass this off to you. While this is relevant to our McKinney-Vento students just as much as it is to foster care, Mockingbird does a lot of work, and this particular research was done with foster care students. Stacy, are you back?
I am back. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about why does this partial credit matter? Well, what we do know from research is that every time a young person in care changes placements, they tend to lose, and from what I read, is 4 to 6 months of academic progress. So imagine those kids, those youth in foster care, moving back and forth between placements and changing schools, and how much academic loss it's building up to lose. And we do know that each youth in foster care usually goes through about an average of 3 placement changes, and they end up on an average about 18 months behind their peers. So they're really losing a lot of academic progress. And when they get older and they're in middle school or high school, they're losing credit for the classes that they're taking. So if a student is in a school and they're in the middle of an English class and then they're moved to a different high school and they go into the English class, it's different. They're going to lose that work that they've done. Sometimes these classes don't always mesh up to look exactly like each other. So one new school may say, well, you took this English class, but it's not the same as we offer here. So we want to make sure that they're getting partial credit for the classes that they're doing, especially when they've been moved. That way they lose less ground in their academic progress, and it improves their chances on becoming more academically successful in school and in life.
Thank you so much, Stacy. I really appreciate you sharing that. And that's just, again, absolutely applicable to our students experiencing homelessness as much as our students in foster care. They move around a lot, which can make it really hard to accrue the credit that they need in order to get through to graduation. Next slide, please. I want to remind those of you that are coming back that we do have a Padlet for questions and answers. If you have questions or answers, could you please, Melissa, could you drop that link in the chat? And again, the password is resources. And if y'all will please put your questions and answers there, we'll work on answering them for you. Thank you. We want to be sure that you're aware. Many of you, I know this is old hat and you're familiar with this. There is legislation that says that we have to help students who are highly mobile students accrue the credit that they need in order to be able to graduate on time. And these are the 6 key points of that piece of legislation. You must eliminate barriers to on-time grade level progression and graduation for both foster youth, McKinney-Vento youth, and students who are at risk and in need of services, which includes those CHINS students and students who have been released from an institutional education facility. But the reality is we just want to make sure that we do this. Isn't every student really entitled to this level of support? But if we can't do it from all, we have to at least make sure that we're removing those barriers for our highly mobile students. As a receiving district, you must waive coursework required for graduation if similar coursework has been completed in a previous district. You must consolidate partial credit and unresolved incomplete courses and provide credit accrual opportunities. So even if a student comes at the end of the school year, you need to figure out a way to help that student earn at least some credit for the time that they are there and hopefully translate the credit they might be coming in with from a different district. If you're the sending district, you need to make sure that you send partial credit with that student in their transcripts. If you're the receiving district, you need to accept it. If a junior or senior is transferring and they're not eligible to graduate from a receiving district because maybe you have you need more credits than the district graduation requirement for the previous district, then you must ensure that that student receives a diploma from the sending district, particularly if they've met all those credits. And then finally, if a student has enrolled in 3 or more districts as a high school student and they've met our state graduation requirements, but not necessarily your local requirements, then as a receiving district, you must waive those requirements and award the diploma. Next slide, please. Thank you. So get creative. There are lots of things that you can do. Look at when students are struggling and having a hard time completing on time. Look at what are the barriers. Do you see trends in attendance and tardies? Maybe you're not even aware that that student is McKinney-Vento, and this might be how you find out. Is it possible that you could reschedule core classes to a different time when the student is better able to participate? Maybe they have to work. Maybe there's a transportation issue that's happening. Look at what periods they're missing. If it's consistently the same time, it's good to have a conversation around what's going on then. Look at if a late start might be more a solution for that student. And then again, look, our students, if you have like a lot of highly mobile students who are failing the same class, maybe that teacher needs some support. Maybe they need a little bit of professional development. Or is it that the student doesn't have the access to computer access and technology that they need? Is there bullying, harassment? These are all key pieces of your role as the building point of contact, and to be that support for those educators and those colleagues and say, hey, how could we dig into what's going on for this student and help them be successful? And you know what? I know sometimes y'all throw every single thing at the wall, and but we have to, that's exactly what we're asking you to do is, do the absolute best that you can to make it possible for them to be successful. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to turn it over to our incredible colleagues. What came up when we were doing some surveying earlier is we heard that the Migrant Ed Department had an amazing presentation on awarding credit. And so we have invited them today to talk about their program and transferring credit and a variety of other supports. And so at this point, I am going to pass this off to my colleague, Sylvia Reyna from the Migrant Ed Department, and let her get rolling. Sylvia, take it away.
Thank you, Vivian. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. And thank you everyone for this opportunity for us to share a little bit about the Mexican transcript and how you could potentially transfer credits from students coming from Mexico to Washington State and who also may be experiencing some homeless situations as they come into your school district. So I'm going to go ahead, Savannah, and pass, continue. And just really quick, another one. Just want you to also take a moment to pause and just recognize the traditional lands that I'm presenting from the Squaxin Island tribe, and just take a moment there to just recognize all the things that are still in high regard for this community and this area. Next slide. Also wanted to just take a moment to recognize, and you can go ahead and do one more press on that slide, I believe, to recognize the migratory students and where they're coming from, and why we need so many supports in Washington State. It is a heavy agricultural state, as you know, or maybe aware of. And Washington State is a huge support of feeding the nation and feeding the world. We are number 1 and number 2 and number 3 in the nation for these different agricultural activities. Next one. And next slide, please. Oh, and then how students are eligible, or go ahead and click on those, if you will. We work with the ages 3 through 21 who have not yet received a high school diploma or its equivalency, and have moved from across school district boundaries for agricultural or fishing purposes, either by themselves or with their family. And it occurs within the last 36 months. There's one more Savannah on that slide. On the next slide. So a few facts about our program is, again, within the last 3 years, we've identified over 30,000 students who are eligible under the criteria, that are also either out of school or preschool age. And so we have quite a few students in our state. We are currently recognized as the 2nd largest migratory student population in the nation. We are a top agricultural industry in the nation, as well as we have such diverse fishing industry. Next slide. And I'm sorry, this is a little small, but I kind of wanted to show you all the different activities that could qualify a family for the program with our top industries, and then where we are across the state. So both the blue and the red in that Washington State map are districts where we have identified migratory students. And we're just a rich state for those students, those families that travel across the state and from other states to work in agriculture and fishing activities. Next slide. And then just a wordle sharing where they're coming from. So we have a lot of intrastate families going across the state to do the different work. We also have families that come from different other states, right? California, Montana, Oregon, Idaho. So lots of mobility happening with our families. And the next slide is regarding those families that come directly from Mexico. And so within the last 3 years, these are families that have come from some part of Mexico into Washington State. That does not mean that those are all who are. Some of them may be traveling through California, through Oregon, and then coming to Washington State. So then in our eligibility, they may look like they just came from California, but they may have a connection with Mexico. So we want to make sure that we not just look at this slide, but look at where could be some other potential areas that they're coming from in addition to the most recent state. Because of that, we wanted to take a moment with you to share with you what does the Mexican school system look like, and how would you be able to take a look at a student's transcript and analyze it for some possible transferable credit that can help the student stay on course with their graduation, especially at the secondary level, and achieve a high school diploma and or its equivalency in Washington State if that's where they're needed. So I'm going to pass this on to two of my colleagues. And I apologize, I forgot to introduce who else is presenting with me. We have Griselda de Veracruz, Enrique Lopez from ESP 189, and Viviana from ESP 123, who are also helping with this presentation. So want to just welcome them, and I'm going to transfer it on to Enrique.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you so much. Can you all hear me? Yeah, all right, perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. This is a great opportunity, and I'm so excited to be here sharing this information with my colleagues. Thank you. Can you switch slides, please? Awesome. Perfect. So first we get into this big question, where do we start, right? In regards to partial credits and getting access to credits. So we encourage all school districts, including school districts with migrant students, to reflect on 4 main areas. 1, does your school district have a policy or process for accepting or transcribing credits from Mexico? Are seat time hours a factor in your school for partial credit? How involved are you in this process, or how could you? Are you able to transcribe, or does that fall on the school counselors? And if so, how will you continue to advocate for students coming into your school with credits from Mexico or another country to have equitable opportunities for their credits to be accepted in your school? And lastly, does your school or school district have a partial credit process in place for mobile students? If not, we encourage you to be an advocate and help set one in place. Next slide, please. This slide gives a visual breakdown of Mexico school system to Washington State by grades. The first box to our left, we see the primaria, meaning grades 1 through 6, considered an elementary in the United States or Washington. Secundaria, grades 7 through 9, considered a middle school in the United States. And preparatoria, or high school, and bachillerato, a private high school, grades 10 through 12th grade. And then there is universidad or college. Thank you. Next slide. So now we're taking a closer look into elementary school, primaria, grades 1 through 6. Elementary school, primaria in Mexico consists of 6 grade levels. Students who are the age of 6 by September 1st begin 1st grade until 1993. Completion of primary school satisfied the legal requirement for compulsory school attendance. Currently, Article 31 of the Mexican Constitution obligates parents to ensure that their children complete primary, the equivalent of grades 1 through 6 in the United States schools, and secondary, the equivalent of grades 7 through 9 in the United States. Next slide, please. Now we're getting into middle school. Secundaria, grades 7 through 9th. And I know in the US we do have some middle schools that do go up to 9th grade. Secondary school, secundaria, consists of 3 levels: 1st year, 2nd year, and 3rd year. There are 4 kinds of secondary schools: general secondary, which is academic, technical secondary, where students take additional hours of vocational classes, and telesecondary, which is broadcast to remote areas, and worker secondary, designed for working youth and adults. The curriculum is the same for all 4 types of secondary schools. Next slide, please. Now we get into the high school level, bachillerato or preparatoria, grades 10 to 12. In Mexico, high school education, also known as educación media superior, follows secondary or secundaria in Mexico and includes academic studies called bachillerato, as well as purely vocational programs called professional technical education. It is offered in federal and state supported public institutions, which do not charge tuition, and in private schools. Approximately 80% of the students attend publicly financed schools, and in some states, the public university owns and operates 1 or more bachilleratos. That was also new news for me as well. Bachillerato usually is a 3 or 4 year program of study, generally attended by youth 15 to 18 years of old. Professional technical education may consist of 2 to 4 years of study, and therefore does not qualify graduates for admissions to a university. So we get to see there's different systems in place, structures, and it's great to know those stories from the students that are coming from those areas and get that information. Thank you. I'll pass it on to Griselda.
Thank you, Enrique. So what you'll have before you is a side-by-side analysis of what this looks like, what Enrique just described right now for Washington State and Mexico. And so we just really want to preface that it's a comparison between Washington State and Mexico. So similar to what Enrique had mentioned, there's some key things to be on the lookout for, right, in terms of the systems of education in place from the country of origin where a student is coming from. So in this case, the example we're providing is Mexico. For example, right, on your left side, you'll see high school 9th grade. In Mexico, it's really secundaria tercer año, so 3rd year of secundaria. And then it goes into a little bit more of high school, which will be equivalent to bachillerato or preparatoria. Next slide, please. And then again, a little bit more details on what is covered in the 3rd year of secundaria. So again, 9th grade, so tercer año de la secundaria. And then that's really key, again, right, in terms of when we think about literal translations from Spanish to English, and what does that entail? So here, we're specifically talking about 9th grade. And then the breakdown of hours for classes that's listed on the left side of the slide. For example, the history of Mexico, civics and ethics, physics, foreign language, history of a state, depending on where a student may be also coming from in Mexico. And then also other courses, for example, like their native language over there is Spanish. So, you know, there is a different requirement per se for a foreign language, right? As we may see it in this country. So that indicates 25 hours. And then again, the breakdown of the hours for arts and physical education. Next slide, please. And then here, what you'll see is a equivalency chart that I'm also dropping in the link. Oh, someone else is doing so. Thank you so much, Viviana. And so here, what you'll see again is a further description of the Mexican transcript course title to the Washington State transcript course title and equivalency. And so that link will allow you to be able to see the extensive list that is in place in terms of categorizing the classes in equivalency. Next slide, please. And I do also want to mention that equivalency chart that Viviana just dropped the link for, y'all will be utilizing it. So, you know, use it as a reference, but that's something that we're going to refer to later in the presentation. And then here, what you have is earned grade conversions. And so, as you all may know, right, over here we have letter grades and then also the point scale. So what will be a 4.0 will be an A or A+. And then for Mexico, the point scale is 1 a 10, so 1 through 10. So it's just for y'all a visual to see what the equivalency is. So an A plus, maybe above a 4.0, it'll be a 10, a 10. And then what is a 4.0 may potentially be a 9 in Mexico, depending again, when we do the comparison. So again, this is a visual for y'all. So next slide, please. And then also, this was mentioned a little bit earlier, partial credit policy. It's important to recognize that not all schools have one yet. Some schools only have one that applies to migratory students. So really, this is for y'all to consider as a starting point if you're not already transcribing credits. And then also just a reminder of our student population that we're talking about today, highly mobile students who sometimes study in Mexico and they move here. And then there's that barrier of credits that they may already have, right? And so how do we do our due diligence to ensure that that they are able to earn the credit for the work that they already completed, whether it's in other places in the country or other places outside of the country. Next slide, please. And then there's some key documents to take into consideration. Again, for examples, as of today, we're talking about Mexico. The first thing is as a certificate of completion for the secundaria. And then again, this includes, 9th grade. A transcript from a preparatoria or escuela técnica. So depending on when the student, participates in the formal education system here, that's what we'll be on the lookout for. And then also using the equivalency chart to the best of your ability, and then use your resources to determine the rest. This is really pertaining to electives. Again, as I mentioned, some classes, it's not the literal translations, it's understanding what is in the content of what is being taught or what the students are learning. Next slide, please. And so what you have before you is a certificado of completion or certificate of completion of the secundaria. And so here indicates key things that you should be on the lookout for. For purposes of time, I'm going to just, again, refer this to y'all to have a look at your own time. Next slide, please. And then again, things to bear in mind at all times is, one, do you have a valid document? If you have doubts on that, with regards to Mexico, there is a Mexican consulate in Seattle that can help you verify the validity of the documents that you are provided. And then also determining the equivalent grade, right? So again, I can't emphasize enough, secundaria or secondary doesn't only mean middle school, it also goes all the way to 9th grade in Mexico. And then also thinking about, did the student complete the school year before coming over here, or are they coming in with potential partial credits? Next slide, please. And then again, this is just for y'all to be able to see what an historial académico is, or what is a transcript. And I do want to preface that this one is very specifically to a private school from Mexico. And so on the left side, you will see that it is blurry, but we'll get into that a little bit more. But just on the right side is you have a visual of what a transcript from Mexico can potentially look like. And again, there's further details that, we're happy to take questions afterwards. Next slide, please. So now we're gonna practice a little bit as a group before going into small groups. So I invite you all to engage with us. Next slide, please. So I'm bringing back what was shown earlier. It is a little blurry, apologies. So on the left side, for folks who are able to make out of the blurriness, and then also maybe perhaps able to read in Spanish, you will see that there's some courses that are listed out. This is a student who in their 5th semester of high school. There's Cálculo 1, so that is calculus. It's equivalent to calculus. Taller literario, so this is a Spanish class since the student's native country is in Mexico and that's their native language. That is, a course equivalency of native Spanish for B. And I do also want to mention that as you look at the left side in the chart, it does say Cálculo 1, and then, it indicates the year that this was taken. This is a little bit of an old transcript, so it says 2011. And next on the right side of that, there's a 9, and then written next to that is 9. So that means that this student earned a 9 out of 10. So that is equivalent to an A grade, so 90%. The second one, which is a native Spanish for B, that's equivalent to a 7, so a 7. That's a 70%, so a C. And then ecología, it's ecology and biology. That's what the US conversion of it is. So the student here earned a 10, so that's a 100%, so it's an A. And then ética, so there's a little bit of something happened here, but ética is ethics. And so for this student, they earn a 10 in ethics. And then there's inglés. So for them, this is considered a foreign language, right? English. And so in this case, the student earned a 7, which is a 70%, grade C. And then psicología is psychology. Computación, another typo here. This is actually computer classes. And so this student earned a 7, which is a 70%, a grade C. And then elección profesional. So again, right, when we talk about context, understanding what does this mean, right? So if I were to do a literal translation, it would be a professional electives course, right? But what does that even mean, right? So in further looking into this, the determination was that this student elected to take a business class. And so that's why it's indicated in the US conversion that's a business class and they earn a 9. So that's a 90% at grade A. And then there's valores. And so here it says values, but really when looking into a little bit more what values may be, it might be potentially another course of ethics class. And so again, it goes back to the importance of checking in and seeing what does the content of the class look like if it's not already listed in the US conversion course list that the link we provided you all with. And so I know I kind of went a little fast on this, but we also really would love for y'all to have a little bit of a practice. And then so, you know, we kind of went a little fast on that. So next slide, please. And then again, just can't emphasize enough a couple of things that have been learned over the years around best practice. Really work with your teachers to ensure that the students are ready to move on to the next class, right? So when you receive the students, depending where their grade levels are or what is indicated on their transcripts, you know, consider having a group of teachers to work with to verify or test the students, right? To verify the courses that they've taken, to best put them in a course that will allow them to be successful or that is at their grade level. Also consider ELL status, you know, again, thinking about language barriers or language access, what does that look like? And then again, verifying the authenticity of documents. And then next slide, please. And then again, some of the feedback that we've gotten and where we've also included some further resources, or it's a continuous work in progress, right? Seeing if there's a series of courses, right? Again, taking into consideration the fact that, you know, a student might be coming from another country, right? So in this case, Mexico, but each country also may potentially have their regions. In the case of Mexico, they have different states. The different classes look, the options of the courses look very different for a student who may potentially be coming from a high school that is a private school or a public school, or if it's like, you know, what Enrique mentioned earlier, if it's a telesecundaria, right? It's a virtual school, you know, whether that's rural. And so those are some things that, you know, it's important to take into consideration. And then also looking into whether the series increases in difficulties across semester. So earlier there was a class that was listed, right? Valores, and then there was Valores 5, right? Valores 5. So really, again, what differentiates them, right? If the translation is ethics class, is this a beginner's ethics class and this advanced ethics? What does that look like? And then also take into consideration number of hours per week that will impact the course equivalency. Next slide, please. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Viviana.
All right, hopefully everybody can hear me. So what we want to do now is, now that we have a foundation, we're going to practice assessing some transcripts. So in the next slide, we're going to show you some transcripts, and if you can, take a picture of it if you can, or if you have a copy of the slides, it's on slide 31. But essentially, we want to give you about 10 minutes, and hopefully we're able to still do that. But we're going to get into small groups, and we really want you to use the link that we provided you earlier to kind of compare these transcripts and start evaluating these transcripts. And this is just a practice, no pressure at all, but we really just want to start this conversation and put it into motion. And I know I said that really, really fast, but I really want to get into breakout rooms so that we can get started on this portion. Any questions before we go into groups? What we'll do now is hopefully we were able to kind of explore that process of evaluating transcripts. And again, it is a working process, so please be gracious with yourself. But we really want to go, if you can go to the next slide, we really want to reflect on that process and get some feedback from you all. So what were some of the concerns in that process and what additional questions do you have? And I know we're almost at time. So if you can, we can take a couple, if you'd like to unmute yourselves, or if you want to put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those in the chat as well. But we really want to hear from you all.
So we had a question that came up, right? So if let's say someone who was in Mexico until their senior year. So in Mexico, they have a 4-year Spanish requirement and 2 years of foreign language. So how does that translate when they get to us? Because we require 4 years of English. And so without having to hold them back, what would we do?
I know it is up to the districts, right, on the credits that you're wanting to award. I know some of our districts here will try to advocate for our students to get some sort of an English credit with those 4 years of Spanish, because it is like an English class, but in Mexico in Spanish. And so it really is up to the districts and how you want to advocate for that. But yeah, there is no right or wrong answer for that. Grisela, did you want to expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, you kind of capture it, Viviana, and I think there's case by case, and when it is a case by case situation, I do highly encourage you. I guess I'm speaking to the person that asked this question, but then just in general for you all, to reach out to us in terms of how we can provide you support in terms of whether that's navigating at your own district level, in terms of what credits can be granted, and also how do we work around opportunities where a student can potentially earn credit, right? So I'm talking only about migrant education program, for example. We do have Dare to Dream academies where a student is provided an opportunity to earn credit. We do have a program that a student can potentially earn an English language arts credit, so 0.5 credit. And so there's opportunities. I think it's a matter of communicating that and us working with you so that way you are able to best support your student.
Any other questions? And again, feel free to put those in the chat as well. And I do want to just share, so in this PowerPoint on the next slide, we do have some resources for you all. And on the resources page, we have some high school credit information that pertains to what the State Board of Education is telling us. We have some credit requirements, so just kind of a refresher on the requirements that our high school students are needing. And then we have the page linked on there for the Mexican Consulate in Seattle, if you want to check that out. And then MSDRS is our migrant student database. So if you have access to that, or if you don't have access to that, you can also request access, but that's a good resource to know who your migratory children or students are and kind of learn a little bit more about them through the reports on there. It's a really great resource. And then as well as on the next slide, we also have another resource for you all. It's a PDF and it's linked on the slide as well. And that is the Evaluating Foreign Transcripts through A to Z manual. And this is really for, it's a reference tool for counselors, high school principals, to really look at it, and it's a guideline. So if you have any other questions that might not be answered on that spreadsheet that we shared with you all, this is a really good tool to also look at and kind of get more clarification. And then on the next page, I did share this website earlier with our elementary folks who had a question. This is really a good resource to kind of break down what those documents say, and it actually translates it to what is it saying in Spanish to what is it saying in English, and it also has a breakdown of elementary, middle, and high school levels on it. So that's a really good resource as well. On the next slide, we have our program contacts, and each ESD and OSPI link is it's linked, it's hyperlinked on here, and it's linked to our contact page. So if you are in any of these regions and you want to reach out to your local ESC for more information, or if you're needing more support, let us know. You can get our contact information linked through here, and we're always willing. And even if you don't see your local ESC on there, reach out to your closest one, because we're always willing to step up and help you.
Thank you so much, Viviana. Any last words, Sylvia, Griselda?
Just thank you so very much for the opportunity to share with you. And thank you, my teammates, for making this a really great session. I really appreciate it. And we do know that there were some questions posed in the chat that we probably didn't get to answer. So we'll work with you, Vivian, on identifying those questions and try to respond to them so you can share out with your contact.
Thank you so much. We will be sending the slides out. It just won't be available right away, and you will have access to those links. And you will also, we'll send out a post email that I will put many of the links in again and documents so that you have them available to you. And if you go on to the next slide, Savannah.
Vivian, I put a whole bunch of those links in the chat as well, if anybody needed to get into them right now and wanted to look.
Thank you so much. This just, you know, a few minutes is just not enough time to cover this amount of content. If there's opportunity to attend other trainings, where would they find that information, Sylvia? If there were trainings that were happening on credit accrual, where might they go to find that information?
Oh, definitely, as Viviana had shared, through our educational service district partners. So we have 4 ESC partners with migrant education programs, and they share out when they're having trainings and the opportunity to participate in a training. So connect to the links that Viviana has been sharing for those 4 ESCs. Northwest ESC Enrique, they actually cover all of Western Washington. So while they're with the Northwest ESC up in Anacortes, they actually help support schools in Western Washington. So
perfect. Thank you so much. And on here, on this particular slide, we've shared a number of other resources that you can link to for credit accrual, maybe not related to migrant education, but related to supporting students experiencing homelessness and or foster care. So I would encourage you to check those different links out. And then of course at OSPI, we have our own division for graduation requirements and transcripts and credit accrual. And that link is in here as well. So under that graduation tab at the bottom there. We're going to go ahead, next slide. And we're going to go to break. You know what? I hate to cut into your break, but if we could keep it to 7 minutes, and hopefully if you need more time and you have to come back a few minutes late, don't worry, do what you need to do. But we're going to go ahead and go to break. And we will see you back here at 2:05.